Hello everybody, it's Sarah and today I have a review for you, and that review is the Liveship Trilogy by Robin Hobb. I read this series for the Hobb-a-Long Read-a-Long by Sam from Sam's Nonsense, and the first book is Ship of Magic, the second book is Magship, and the third book is Ship of Destiny. This review won't be spoiler free, so if you have not read this series, you probably shouldn't watch it if you don't want to be spoiled. But let me just say that I would really recommend to you that you go and read this series because it's really great. And if you were hesitant like me to pick up this series because you weren't too much of a fan of the Farseer trilogy, still pick this up, it's so much better. My favorite book in this series was probably Magship, and my least favorite was the last book, Ship of Destiny, and I will get into that why I thought that it was the worst part of the series. Since this is going to be a spoilery review, I will just assume that all of you watching have read this series and I won't talk about what it's about. Let me start with the negative stuff of the series, and sadly there are a lot of very specific negative things in those books. First of all, let me start with the characters. While I do love many of the characters in this series, and I like probably all of them more than the characters in the Farseer trilogy, I have a problem with the way Robin Hobb handles her characters. I understand that if you have a series that's as long as this one is, you have to have some development and some change to the characters. However, what I do not like, and it was the same deal with the Farseer trilogy, is that Robin Hobb somehow manages to make me love a character from hating a character from one second to the other. I don't care if a character that I love in a book does something that I think is kind of stupid and where I'm kind of pissed off at the character for a little bit. In my heart, I still really like the character. However, the case in this series is that I start hating the character with all my heart, and that's characters that I used to love. It's the same thing with characters that I hated at the beginning and then I love at the ending. I really don't care if there's one or two characters like that, but if you have the whole set of characters and it constantly changes between loving and hating the characters, I don't like reading about those characters at some point anymore, because I just think, well, I love that character now, but I'm probably going to end up hating him or her anyway, and so why should I even get attached to the character? I like it if there's at least one or two characters in a series where you just know, okay, that's a good guy, and you'll start loving them at the beginning and still love them at the ending. And the same goes for villains. Maybe that's just something that I didn't like, because I do like some continuity, and I'm also not against tropes in books. And I think that's something that's really enjoyable about reading, especially fantasy reading, that up to a point you kind of know what's going to happen. You can have your twists and changes and maybe have a twist on a trope or something, but there's still this basic sense of knowing what's going to happen, and I just didn't have that when it came to the characters in this series. There was actually just one character that I really loved throughout, and that was Brashen. Also, I feel even though the character development was great in this series, a lot of the changes to the characters happened very quickly. My examples are Malta, Wintro, and Kenneth. Malta was a positive change. She, of course, went from this stupid little brat in the first 1.5 books to this just great and strong female character. I hated her at the beginning and I loved her at the end, but she just went from really bratty to awesome in a few chapters, maybe one or two, and it was just a bit too quickly done. Then in the opposite direction are Wintro and Kenneth. I can talk a long time about Kenneth. I really liked him at the beginning. I really did. It was clear from the beginning that he's not a good guy, but he was set up like a kind of Jack Sparrow kind of character who might be morally very grey, maybe even very dark grey, but ultimately he will do the right thing, even if it's just for his own ends. Of course, he manipulates a lot, and we get to see that from the other POVs that aren't Kenneth. But even in the first book and the first half of the second book, even from his own POV chapters, he was very likable. He was charming and I could connect to him, I could understand him, and then suddenly, it was like within a couple of chapters, he turned into just a cold bastard. And there, for me at least, there was no obvious reason why he would suddenly turn like bad, 100%. And I probably would have liked his character if he had been set up like that from the beginning. Like, for example, Kyle. I hated Kyle, but I could appreciate him as a villainous character and as an obstacle. But with Kenneth, because he was so likable at the beginning and then turned so evil without any cause, I really couldn't like him as a villain, and that was kind of annoying to say the least. Also, his change to being really evil couldn't be disguised as a sudden twist because he wasn't set up as a white knight kind of character at the beginning, and so I just didn't like the whole arc of Kenneth. Another character that I really didn't enjoy the change was Wintrow. He was such a lovable person at the beginning, and then suddenly he turned like really cold. And of course that was partly because of the influence of Kenneth, and I do understand that. He was heavily influenced by Kenneth and by the way that he was handled, and he had to become a man or something. I would have thought that as much love as he got at the monastery, he would at least be a bit strengthened in himself. He was doubting Kenneth in one chapter, and in the next chapter, like the one in Divvytown, when Kenneth was attacked, he suddenly is all for him. And it's not talked about anymore why exactly he decided to change his opinion. And it was just like, why? Why so suddenly? Next, the twists in this book weren't too much to my liking. So it's not like the plot twists, but I just thought there weren't any twists. The first thing is that Kenneth is a Ludlock and that Paragon is his ship. I thought that that wasn't hinted at in any way. It was just suddenly said in the third book, yeah, Kenneth is a Ludlock, whatever, deal with it. Which was kind of too sudden. There was a lot about a tragic past hinted at in Kenneth's chapters, but there was nothing about him being a trader's son. And also the connection between the serpents, the ships, and the dragons. I think that went in the exactly opposite direction. I think that was hinted at too strongly, to the point where I wasn't really surprised at any revelation that happened in that part of the story. I still think that that part of the story is really great, like the connections are amazing, and also how they are connected to the Elderlings, but at the same time I just thought that I wasn't really surprised by any of it when it came to the time that it was revealed. The one revelation that I think was really well done was Amber, and I probably wouldn't have got behind it if it hadn't been hinted at in one of the discussion threads at the very beginning on the Hobb-a-Long Read-a-Long Goodreads page. I think I probably would have only gotten behind it when Amber starts carving Paragon in Fitz's likeness, which I'm not a fan of, actually, but maybe not even then. But yeah, I just thought that that was really great. And what I also love about that storyline is that the Fool in the Farseer trilogy is set up as a character where you're not really sure, is he male or female? But at the same time, he's always talked about as a he, so as a male. So actually, while reading the Farseer trilogy, I was kind of like, you can't just say that you're not sure whether he's a male or a female and then always talk about him as a male. But now we have Amber, and she's obviously a woman, and so now once again we're not sure, is this character male or female? And I really love that, and I'm really excited whether or not we get to know his gender by the end of the last series. I have to talk about this book and why I just really didn't like it. First of all, I really think endings can make or break a book. You can have the greatest book of all times. If the ending is shit, pardon my language, you just forget how great the book was, because all you remember is that ending. And that's kind of what happened a little bit to me with this series. I still can remember that I loved the whole series and that I really enjoyed reading it, but when I think about the series, I think about the ending and I am really frustrated and really angry, which just isn't a nice feeling. I had the same problem with the Farseer trilogy. I get the feeling that the characters who are built up to be like the big key in the ending of the book actually don't do anything, and then also the ending doesn't seem, it's kind of slow. It's like built up to the ending and then it's just talked about like something that happened in the past. I thought the ending that we were building towards wasn't regaining Vivassia, which didn't happen, but it was bringing the serpents to the hatching grounds, and that was talked about like in the past, and so I was like really annoyed at that. None of the characters who set out to do anything managed to do that. Althea wanted her ship back, she didn't get it. Malta and Kefra wanted Kyle back, he died. Ronica wanted to have her family around her again and to save her family. Well, that didn't happen because everyone is somewhere else. Kenneth wanted a Liveship, which he had for a little bit, but then he died. And so it's like every character didn't get what he wanted at the beginning. Maybe Brashen, maybe he did get what he wanted. He got Althea, although I feel like the price was a little bit high for that. It's like, it felt a bit like a cop-out ending, the thing between Brashen and Althea, because Althea didn't get what she wanted. And of course I wanted them together. I love them as a couple. I just loved their angsty relationship throughout the whole series, but I would have loved it so much more if like Althea got Vivassia and Brashen was like her first mate or something like that. Because I think why I'm so disappointed in that is that all the women in this book are so strong and they were set up to be really, really strong characters, and in the end none of them got what they wanted. Also, the whole rape thing was handled horribly, 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 horribly. I already talked a long time about that on the discussion thread on the Goodreads group, but Cyrilla was raped, and I would argue that if you can say that about rape, that her rape was worse than Althea's, because Cyrilla was raped continuously over, I think, weeks maybe, and I'm not sure anymore if it was just the captain who raped her or if it was just generally also parts of the crew. At the beginning of the third book, she was like a really unlikable character because she was still dealing with the rape, but with Ronica's help and just she managed to work through it on her own. And she didn't actually really get the help from anyone, but she still worked through it. Of course, we don't know how she deals with romantic love, how she deals with men, but she's not scared shitless anymore. Althea, on the other hand, nobody believed her, which I actually didn't like. I know that there are a lot of rape victims out there who are not believed, but I still think that at least Vivassia should have believed her. The only thing that I liked about that is that Etta believed her, and I believe that they would have been able to become really great friends. They aren't that unlike each other, but it wasn't to be. She doesn't even get away from Kenneth, because Kenneth is now part of Paragon, which you could also, of course, see as a metaphor that, like, the rape never leaves you or something. But I still don't like it, and I would have so much more preferred it if Althea had just talked to Brescian, and Brescian and her were like, okay, so this is something that we have to work through, but we want to be together, and so we will work through it. And if it had ended at that point, and not with Paragon having taken away Althea's pain. And I just think that that whole part was unnecessary and not well done, and it just annoyed me to no end. And also I think it would have been a great opportunity for Kefira and Althea to talk again to each other, and maybe Kefira helping Althea and them finding to each other again as estranged sisters. Another opportunity that I would have found much more satisfying than Kyle just dying would have been if he had come back to Bingtown, and I really wanted to see how Malta and Kefir would react now that they have changed so much. You know, maybe it's a bit sadistic towards the two of them, but I feel like that would have been so interesting, and I feel like it's an opportunity missed. Hello everybody, it's future me, because past me forgot to say something that bothered me about the Liveship Traders trilogy. And that is the fact that there are male ships. Because as far as I know, I mean, I'm not like a ship expert, but there was a time when I was very much into pirates, and as far as I can remember, ships are never male. They are always female. I'm not 100% sure, so if some of you know better you can correct me in the comments, but I'm like 90% sure. And I mean, life ships don't have a gender at the beginning when they're like carved. They're given a gender, so I'm not really sure why they made any male ships. And yeah, that kind of confused me, kind of bothered me, and I just wanted to mention that. Now, go on. Bye. Okay, I think that was all the negative stuff that I had to talk about this series. I feel like it's a lot, but now let's get into the positive stuff. First of all, of course, the characters. These characters were just so much more lovable than the one in the Farseer trilogy. I couldn't really connect to any of the characters in the Farseer trilogy. I didn't really care about any of them. And that's what's important to me when reading, especially a fantasy series that goes on over a long period of time. I need to have a character that I can care about. For example, I liked Fitz as a character, but I didn't really care about him. And what happens to me after that is that I don't really care if they live or die or what happens to them, and then I can't really get into that series. Here I had a lot of characters that I loved. I loved Brescian, I loved Althea, I loved Malta at the end, and I really cared about what happened to them, and so I was more invested in the plot and in the series as a whole. I think that all of the characters had so much great character development, no matter how minor they were, because I feel like Kefira, for example, wasn't that big of a character, but she still had so much character development, and actually I enjoyed her character development the most. I thought it was the most realistic, and it was like the slowest or the least sudden character development, and so I just loved her at the ending, but I hated her at the beginning. Althea also, I wasn't a fan of Althea in the first few chapters because she was just so egotistical, and at the end I just love her. I think she's such a strong character, and that's also why I just really hate that she didn't get Vivassia, because I feel like she would have deserved it, and I don't think that she got anything in the end except Brescian, but like she didn't get anything on her own. Ronica was an awesome character, and she walked the line between really annoying me with her decisions and then going, yes, you got it, and I really fell in love with her. I think she might be my favorite character, like not the one that I love the most, but that I just like the most as a character in a book, because she was just so well written. And with Ronica, Robin Hobb found the right balance between making her likable and having her make good and strong decisions, and then also just being really stupid at some points. I don't like Vivacia, I'm just honest with you, and when it comes to Vivacia, look at this cover. It's really beautiful, right? But this is obviously Vivacia and Althea. And actually Vivacia is described as naked in the book, and here she's clothed, and I get that you can't really show boobs on a cover, but I'm kind of annoyed by it because it's such a little thing really, but it's just a pet peeve, I guess, that if characters are shown on a cover, I kind of want them to look the part. I really love the political stuff in this book. Again, I think that's Robin Hobb's strength, probably the political stuff. I also really liked it in the Farseer trilogy. That's what my favorite part about the Farseer trilogy was. And here, once again, it was really great, but here it was very different because it wasn't all about war, but it was just different groups coming together and just showing the tension of what happens when you have a kind of small place where a lot of different groups come together. And I think that's actually very accurate to what happens today. I live in Austria, and well, at the moment not really, but of course with the war in Syria we have a lot of refugees, and so there's always the parts of the people who say, no, we don't want any new guys, they don't understand our customs, they don't understand what we're about. And then there's the people who want to make compromises, and then there's just the people who just welcome everyone with open arms. I'm part of the middle group, kind of, where I think you can't just turn new people and new influences away, but you just have to find the compromise between keeping your own tradition and also welcoming new influences. And I feel like that was very well achieved at the end of the third book in Bingtown, and so I was really happy for that. And that was all that I had to talk about in the series. I feel like I talked a lot more about the negative stuff than the positive stuff. It's just a lot easier for me to just find specific things that I didn't like than specific things that I like, because I'm just like, yeah, I just loved it overall, but that stuff was what I didn't like. But anyways, if you have read this series, please leave a comment down below. What did you think about it? Also, if you enjoyed this review, please subscribe. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below. And I hope I will see you soon. Bye!